The sky was the color of ash, a fiery glow flickering on the horizon as smoke billowed over the hills of Los Angeles. The wildfires had been raging for days, consuming everything in their path, homes, trees, and dreams alike. Streets once bustling with life were now eerily quiet, save for the crackle of flames and the distant wail of sirens. For many, the battle was about survival. For some, it was about protecting those who couldn't fight for themselves. Amara Evans tightened her grip on the steering wheel of her old truck as she navigated through the chaos. She was a rescuer, both of animals and humans, working with a disaster response team. The back of her truck was a makeshift shelter, stacked with cages, blankets, and supplies. This wasn't her first wildfire, but every time felt like the first. The urgency, the danger, it never got easier. The fire had jumped Highway 101 earlier that morning. Amara and her team had received an emergency call. Families stranded in a neighborhood being cut off by advancing flames, and worse, a local animal shelter directly in the fire's path. They had 8 hours until the area would be fully engulfed, maybe less. As she sped toward the burning hills, Amara glanced in her rearview mirror. Behind her, in another truck, was Javier Martinez, a fellow rescuer known for his quick thinking and determination. The two had worked side by side for years, but this was one of the toughest missions yet. They weren't just rescuing people, they were trying to save dozens of animals who had already been abandoned by fate. The neighborhood was a nightmare. Smoke hung heavy in the air, stinging eyes and choking lungs. Cars were backed up in a panicked gridlock as families tried to flee, their belongings stuffed haphazardly into trunks. The team split up, working through the chaos to calm residents and guide them to safety. Amara approached one house where a mother and her 2 children stood frozen in the doorway, the flames flickering closer.
You need to move now. Cover your faces. It's going to get worse.
But what about Max?
Amara didn't hesitate. She pulled a flashlight from her tool belt and sprinted through the yard, searching for Max, who turned out to be an oversized Labrador with a white muzzle. He was trembling in a corner, surrounded by fallen branches and smoke. Amara crouched beside him, her voice soothing despite the chaos. "It's okay, buddy. You're coming with me." She slipped a leash over his neck and carried him back to the truck, her muscles burning as he squirmed in fear. The family burst into tears as they saw him, hugging him tight even as Amara ushered them to safety. Meanwhile, Javier was at the shelter, where volunteers had frantically been trying to evacuate animals. The building was old, and the fire was closing in fast. Dogs barked wildly, cats hissed in their carriers, and the horses in the stable out back thrashed against their stalls. Javier worked quickly, helping load crates and cages into their trucks, but the horses were a bigger challenge.
Amara, I need backup. The horses won't move, and the smoke is making them panic.
I'm on my way.
Amara replied, speeding toward the shelter as the flames grew taller around it. She could feel the heat through the truck windows as she parked and ran toward the stables, where Javier was trying to calm a frightened mare. Amara grabbed a blanket, draping it over the mare's eyes to block out the chaos. Slowly, they guided her toward the trailer, each step measured and careful. The moment they loaded the last animal, part of the shelter roof collapsed in a fiery blaze, sending embers flying into the air. Javier and Amara dove into the truck, their clothes streaked with soot and sweat. It was almost surreal, driving away as the fire swallowed the place whole. They had saved lives, but there was so much they couldn't save. When they reached the evacuation site, families and animals alike were reunited, their relief palpable despite the lingering fear. Max the Labrador barked happily as his family hugged him tight, while volunteers comforted frightened cats and calmed jittery horses. The evacuees were safe for now, but Amara knew the fight wasn't over. As Amara sat on the curb, her body aching and lungs burning, a little girl approached her. She was holding a scruffy terrier wrapped in a blanket. "Thank you," the girl said softly, her wide eyes filled with gratitude. "You saved him. You saved all of us." Amara's heart swelled, and despite her exhaustion, she smiled. "That's what we're here for." In the days that followed, the wildfires continued to test the limits of human courage and resilience, but in the face of destruction, there was hope, a patchwork of strangers coming together to protect the most vulnerable. Amara and her team kept pushing forward, fueled by the knowledge that every life mattered, whether it barked, meowed, or cried for help. And in the end, it wasn't just about rescue. It was about reminding the world that even in the darkest moments, there's always light to be found.